Panel lights, pancake lights, cob lights, spotlights, ring lights, tube lights, light bulbs, headlights, highlights, low lights. There are so many types of lights that you can buy and so many suggestions for what you should buy. And from my experience, it's easy to waste money on lights because you'll buy something from the hype and then you'll find out that you don't really use it that often. But there are 3 types of lights in particular that I almost always find myself using, or at least wish I had available to me, and these 3 lights could be enough for you as well. And the best part is that you can spend as little as $250 on these lights, excluding the stands and the light modifiers, and expect to get professional quality lighting for a variety of different videos. We're gonna go over each of these lights as well as different scenarios that you might find yourself in when you're shooting, and how you can use these lights to get a dynamic and professional look. The first and most essential light is a cob light with a bones mount. Cob, or COB, stands for chip on board, and it's essentially an array of LED chips tightly packed together to create one larger LED chip. This gives it an excellent uniformity of brightness and quality, and when paired with the bones mount, these lights are extremely easy to modify and diffuse. Many YouTubers and solo filmmakers and videographers use these type of lights because they're not only great quality lights, but they're also very convenient and easy to set up and use. If most videos you shoot are of one subject and it's usually indoors in small spaces and you're not having to compete with a lot of ambient light like the building lights and natural light, then you can go with something a lot more inexpensive and with less output like the Godox SL60. You can often find this for sale on Amazon for $110, and it can be the perfect budget option for you if all you're shooting are YouTube videos like this in a small room. But if you want a stronger light that's going to make it more versatile and future-proof, maybe you're shooting client videos and other videos that are outside of YouTube, then I would recommend something like the Amaran 200D, which you could find for $270 on Amazon. This light is going to give you enough output for when you're shooting in brighter spaces or when you're shooting with 2 to 3 subjects. Even if you're shooting one subject, it's going to allow more options for diffusing and modifying because the light can compensate with more output. Cob lights are perfect as your key light, and that's most often what you're going to be using it for, but because of that bones mount, it makes it extremely versatile because you can attach things like Fresnel lenses and gobo heads to do a lot of really cool things. The second light I recommend is an RGB tube light. These have become extremely popular over the last couple years, and for good reason, but they can become overhyped if you don't have specific uses for them. Tube lights come in all different sizes, but the most common sizes are 1 foot, 2 foot, or 4 foot. The first tube lights I got were a pair of Nanlite Pavotube 30Cs, which are the 4 foot versions of the light, and I got them instead of the 15Cs or the 6Cs because I just assumed the bigger the better. But the truth is, I often find myself trying to use them instead of them being an obvious lighting solution. The tube light I find myself using much more often is the Ambitful A2, which is a 1 foot tube light, and you can find it for only $50. And later in the video, I'm going to show you how both of these lights can be very useful, but why I more often use the $50 light. In general, RGB tube lights are great because 1, you can match any color temperature in a room or choose any interesting color that you want. 2, the tubular shape makes it look really cool and interesting in your videos. And 3, it's naturally softer light because of the larger size of the light and also the material that is in front of the light that helps to diffuse it. The third type of light I recommend, and this might be a surprise to some, is a light bulb. But not just any light bulb, specifically a dimmable RGB light bulb. There's a few different options, but there's only one that I recommend, and that is the Aputure B7C. The B7C is controlled via the Sidus Link app, where you have full control over the output, the color temperature, and endless color options, as well as interesting lighting effects like emulating fireworks, cop car lights, party lights, and much more. It also has a color match feature where you point the phone's camera at another light and then it matches the color of that light. It's $70 for a light bulb, which sounds kind of crazy, but the more I use it, the more valuable I find it is. And now we're gonna go over a few real life examples where I use these 3 lights or a combination of just 2 of them. So here's an example of a semi-traditional 3-point lighting setup. We've got a key light, a hair light, and instead of a fill light, we've got a practical / accent light. We're using our cob light as our key light, which like I said, is what you're going to use it for 99% of the time. And with the bones mount, we're able to attach this 48-inch softbox which is turning our small cob chip into a very large source and thus giving a very nice soft light. Next, we have this lamp in the background that's opposite of our key light, and inside of that lamp is the Aputure B7C, which we've dimmed down to where we want it, and we set it to 3200 Kelvin to give it that warmer, more natural look. And this contrast of one side being warmer and one side being lighter because of the key light, that contrast gives the overall image more dimension. The lamplight also gives us that relaxed, inviting look that we wanted, and also helps to fill in the ambient light on that side of the frame, which is naturally darker. Lastly, we have the Ambitful A2, which we've boomed above our subject, and it's creating this hair light on them, and that's helping to separate them from the background. The A2 is also set to 3200 Kelvin to match the B7C, and this makes the light look more natural because it's coming from the same side as the lamp light. This 3-point lighting setup is a tried and true method, and it's one of my go-to setups because you can place a lamp in pretty much any setting and it's gonna make sense and look good. In this next example, we're only using our cob light as our key light and the Ambitful A2 as a hair light again. So this time we put the honeycomb grid on top of our key light so that we can direct the light more just on our subject and prevent that light from spilling onto the background. And this is giving us that more moody look that we were going for. A scenario like this is we're getting a more powerful cob light like the Amaran 200D over the SL60 could come in handy. We actually did need the extra output of a stronger light because the honeycomb grid cuts a lot of the output of a light, especially when it's covering a 48-inch softbox. And the Ambitful A2, again, is the perfect hair light because it's covering just the part of the hair and the shoulder that we wanted, and we're also able to turn it to 5600 Kelvin to match that daylight balance color of the key light. If you needed to shoot portrait-type B-roll shots like this lighting setup is almost always going to work. In this next part, I'm going to show you some really cool ways to use the Aputure B7C. A really good use for the B7C that many people may not think about is using it as a key light. And you can do this easily by taking a really cheap photo softbox with a light bulb mount. And you might already have one of these laying around like I do from this super cheap lighting kit I got from Amazon. Now you've got this super light portable key light that you can easily mount in different ways. And it's not just any soft key light, it's an RGB key light, and this can be very useful for product shots. In this example, we're using it as top-down lighting, which is popular for product shots, and then you can use the A2 as an accent light or a rim light to give it that extra pop. This is going to give you plenty of creative B-roll shots. In this example, we're able to stick the Ambitful A2 to the range hood because of the magnets that are in the light, and you can turn it to any bold color that you want. And then you can match the color with the B7C and use it to get soft, pleasing light on the subject when you go in for the tighter close-up shot. With the Aputure B7C in the softbox, you can now use it as an accent light to fill your background and get a variety of different solid colored backgrounds. Now you can use your cob light as your key light, and you can throw the honeycomb grid on top of the softbox to make sure that that light isn't spilling onto the background and diluting the color of the Aputure B7C. And if you want a nice hair light, use the Ambitful A2 and match the color of the Aputure B7C, and now you have a really nice looking setup. The last example for how you can use these lights is for YouTube setups, just like mine. So I have my cob light, the Godox VL300 with a 34-inch softbox and a honeycomb grid on top of it, and I'm using it as my key light. The Aputure B7C is in that IKEA lamp over my left shoulder, and it's set to 3200 Kelvin to create that contrast of warm and cool lights. And it's also providing some light behind me to help separate me from the background. And we've also got the A2 right over here acting as a practical and an accent light to help light up this side and also to bring more interest to the background. And if it's not obvious already, I am using an additional 2 lights. On this side right here, I have my Nanlite Pavo Tube 30C that's set to this blue color to help light up the background a little bit more, but also to contrast this warmer color and create a lot more dimension in the image. And then I also have this cheap Yongnuo spotlight thing right above me that's acting as a hair light. But even if I turn off these 2 lights and use just the 3 lights that I talk about, I still think that the image looks really cool. One of my favorite things about this trio of lights is that it's very lightweight, portable, and easy to set up. The 2 smaller lights are battery powered, so I can use the internal battery if I needed to, and if I'm not using them here in the home studio, I can easily just grab them, pack them up, and go. If you're considering buying the larger tube lights, I would still encourage you to buy them if you have a lot of ways that you want to use them. Here's a few examples from past shoots that I've done just to show you the different ways that I've used larger tube lights. I talked a lot about the smaller tube lights like the A2 because I feel like it has more practical real life use, at least in my case. But depending on the type of content that you shoot, larger tube lights can be very useful. In fact, you can do whole lighting setups with just 2 4-foot tube lights. And you can learn about how to do just that in this video right over here. If you want more videos on lighting tips and inspiration, click on this playlist right over here. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.